Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher's in the house today. We'll be catching up with him on a little football. DeAndre Swift in the house this weekend, or excuse me, today. He met the Philly media for the first time, as did Olamide Zaccheaus. Got the opportunity to talk to him for the first time this week, did the Philly media. So we'll be getting his thoughts on their fits and now how the room shakes out with everybody in it. We got a lot of football. By the way, Micah Parsons news, we brought that up a little earlier today. We teased that a little earlier. According to some reports, including Micah Parsons himself, he is bulking up and making a full-time switch to defensive end this year. Remember, he played a lot of linebacker. They moved him all over the place, but it looks like they are now going to just make Micah Parsons a full-time defensive end. So you'll see Parsons now being a full-time defensive end. I want to get some thoughts on Patrick Queen and this Vic Fangio stuff as well that has been kind of surfacing all throughout the day today. Adam Schefter said on a Philadelphia station that essentially Fangio, that it impacted a lot of lives, that Fangio probably wouldn't have taken the Dolphins job, and he would have stayed in Philadelphia if things didn't go down the way they went. There's a whole heck of a lot that is impacted here. Let's see what Geoff Mosher has today on the Sports Bash live on Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Moshe?
Hey, Mike, what's going on, bud?
What a day, man. And Joel Embiid, MVP, got game 2 tonight, but, you know, the Eagles run the town sometimes. And, when someone like Adam Schefter, very well-respected reporter, says something, people tend to listen. And he's claiming that, look, Vic Fangio would have stayed in Philadelphia, and he's kind of insinuating that this whole John Gannon tampering thing had something to do with this, and that Fangio would have been the next coordinator here had this possibly not all gone down. Does the timeline add up to you?
Certainly, and with all due respect to Adam, who's a great reporter and as far as I know, is correct with this. I mean, this is something that I think Adam Kaplan and I have talked to you about going back to the Super Bowl days, is that Vic Fangio was hanging around the Eagles all year long, and that was intentional. The Eagles felt, and this goes back to last year when John Gannon was having those interviews just after his first year with the Eagles, Howie Roseman came out and said, we're probably going to wind up losing him. You know, this was this time Gannon last year, right?
Talking about losing Gannon.
Gannon, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that's why Vic Fangio was hanging around and in a sort of pseudo consultant role. It was sort of an unambiguous role that he had, but he was certainly around. You know, he was there during minicamp. He was there during training camp. He was there at times during the season. And the plan would have been to get Vic Fangio in there had they lost Jonathan Gannon. But at one point, the Eagles thought that the ship sailed there, that it looked like, Houston was going to hire DeMeco Ryans. And I think there was a sense around the NFL at one point during the hiring process, as the playoffs went on, that Arizona was going to go with, I can't think, Flores, right? There was a sense going around the NFL that was going to be a thing, and it just didn't turn out to be. But, as we can see here, if you remember, when Vic Fangio agreed to go to Miami, it didn't happen right away either, right?
Yeah,
and there was
even
some kind
initially
of thought he might go to San Francisco after that.
Right. There was a report that he accepted the job, Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, January 29th, which is the day the Eagles won the NFC Championship game. So that's what I asked about the timeline, because some people say, well, he accepted that job. Gannon at that time had lost out on the Houston job. So it wasn't the thought that Gannon was returning to the Eagles, and Fangio took the Miami job with the thought that Gannon is not getting the Houston job.
100%.
Right.
100%. So, I mean, that's why ownership was probably not thrilled, with everything that was going on there, because
not thrilled after the fact that he got another opportunity.
Yes.
Or do you think by that time you're saying that Gannon had known the Arizona opportunity he was getting?
Possibly, Mike. I mean, it's really hard without knowing exactly what happened on what
under the premise that you're bringing up, or that's been brought up. It seems that Fangio and the Eagles were maybe saying, hey, if he gets this Houston job, we're going to have you here. Gannon says, I'm not getting the Houston job.
Right.
And
he
Fangio
even came out and said that afterward, right? He said, I'm going to be with the Eagles after the Houston job went to D'Amico Ryans, Bird Gang. I'm not going anywhere or something like that. So, yeah, I think the Eagles were led to believe that Jonathan Gannon wasn't going anywhere after he didn't get the Houston job.
Okay, gotcha. So, but my point is, he's saying, I didn't get the Houston job. He didn't hold them hostage and kind of say, I might get this Houston job, I might not. He was, hey, I didn't get the Houston job, therefore I'm staying here. And then Fangio says, all right, he's not taking that Houston job. I'll go get a job elsewhere. Then the Arizona opportunity comes up. And so the Arizona thing doesn't match with the Fangio stuff is really what's going on here.
Well, I think because they contacted him at a time they weren't supposed to.
Yes.
That probably is what agitated Lurie. Maybe in the long run they would have lost Fangio anyway, but
right.
But
I
Arizona,
guess the question that comes into play here is, when did the Arizona contact come into play?
Right. And really the long scheme is, and I'm sure they're happy with Sean Desai and they can't wait to get it started, but they probably felt going into the Super Bowl, right, or a week before, that they were either going to have one of two coordinators. They were either going to have Vic Fangio or they were either going to have Jonathan Gannon. Don't think they saw themselves at that point, right, a week before the Super Bowl when all the permissible contact is over now, having to find themselves a new defensive coordinator in the offseason, which then caused them more strife when their defensive backs coach, who didn't get it, wanted out. You know what I'm saying? So it seemed to bring some unnecessary drama on the Eagles and cause some conflicts that may not have happened to happen if everybody was playing it copacetically.
Right. And then, because keep this in mind, Fangio gets reported that he's going to take the job on January the 29th in Miami. He did not sign the deal. He ends up signing that deal the day after Gannon gets a job. But keep in mind, Fangio did come back to work for the team during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So another oddity in this whole process, I guess, if you will.
And then, by the way, wound up and I don't know that this bothered the Eagles, but I mean, he did wind up taking an Eagles defensive quality control coach, Joe Casper, with him to Miami. So the Eagles were thinking they were getting if they lost Jonathan Gannon, and instead they lost their next guy. They lost the defensive quality control coach. They lost their defensive backs coach. So, and then they and they also lost their linebackers coach. And if you remember, they interviewed Nick Rallis for their defensive coordinator post after Gannon left. And when Jonathan Gannon talked about that at the Combine, he kind of admitted he made a mistake in how he went about it by taking Nick Rallis with him, because certainly Shane Steichen didn't get anybody he was allowed to take with him. So the whole thing caused a whole lot of mess, man, for the organization.
Yo, absolutely. And of course, Gannon is like public enemy number one, so everybody wants to kick dirt on him while he's down. But it seems in this instance here, he gets interviewed by Houston, which was before the NFC Championship game. He ends up not getting that job. He goes back and says, I didn't get that job. I'm staying here. Fangio says, okay, I don't have a job. I'm going to go get a job. That's when everything gets cloudy a little bit after that. All right, when did Arizona contact you and tamper with, I don't know, when did Austin Fort get hired down there?
He was hired relatively close to the end of the season, right? Because they had already fired John Robinson.
No, John Keim. John Keim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Steve Keim.
I'm thinking, wrong guy. Steve Keim. Yeah, wrong GM getting fired. But Austin Fort came from Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Josh is telling me January 16th is when Austin Fort got hired.
There you go.
Okay.
So
who knows?
By the way, to put a real, like a reality thing on this, because teams they lose coaches, they lose execs all the time. I don't know if the Eagles were, or Jeffrey Lurie in this case, was really truly irate, or if he just saw a good opportunity to nab the Cardinals for doing something wrong and get something out of it. I don't know.
Yeah, because what I would say, Jeff, is we are naive to think that tampering doesn't go on all the time in that industry. And
correct.
To further the conversation, these people who are mad that Gannon was distracted, I mean, I feel like that is just frivolous as can be.
I would agree with you on that. I would agree.
Right,
I mean,
right.
at the end of the day,
The guy's in the
win a
Super Bowl. Right. He coached the team for 2 years, coached 19 games, and then he got to the Super Bowl and decided, you know what, I don't really care. I'm going someplace else. I just can't get on board with that.
Yes, Jonathan Gannon is smart. I will give him that. And anybody who's smart knows that if you're coaching in the Super Bowl, you probably have your best chance to win the Super Bowl as opposed to being the head coach of a franchise that has never won a Super Bowl, correct?
Arizona, no.
Yeah. So, I mean, just play the percentages right there. Okay. I think he knew. I think he's still. Listen, I'm sure he expects to do well in Arizona, but I think it's deep down inside him. He knows that might be the closest he'll ever get to winning a Super Bowl ring.
Well, that's another good point. He's with the team that's in the Super Bowl, and who knows when you have another opportunity to ever get back there. Like every player says, when you're there, you do everything you can. And again, people are acting like, all right, this is what I get a chuckle out of, is John Gannon didn't prepare enough, and he was giddy at the end. And I'm thinking, all right, so all the coaches are preparing together in like a room. They're all preparing at the same time. Did he sneak out and just like say, hey, you guys, I'll go get the lunch. You guys keep preparing. I'll go grab, I'll fly, you buy, and I'll be back with the pizzas. Like, they're all preparing in a room together for this. So they might prepare for 8 hours a day for that. There's still an insurmountable amount of time that you have to yourself, to your family, to your life that it does not go towards preparing for that game, that you may, in fact, have other things on your mind.
Yeah, I mean, you may go to Las Vegas the night before a huge NBA playoff game or 2 nights before, get into a little tiff and then still score 45 points in the game, right?
Exactly. I want to get your thoughts on DeAndre Swift today. He spoke to the media for the first time. And now after hearing him and kind of getting a picture of what his role might be, we were talking about this earlier about, what is your thoughts on the running back in the pass game in this offense? Because there's some thoughts of the running back doesn't catch the ball in this offense a lot because when Hurts sees an open space, he takes it. He's not checking down to dump the ball off to the running back. So does that negate what Swift is best at?
I don't know. I think that's a fair point to bring up. I also think it's a pretty fair point to bring up that Jalen Hurts evolved quite a bit from his first year as a starter to his second year as a starter. So there's no reason why he can't evolve in year 3 as a full starter, as someone who does look at the running back a little bit more in the passing game. And there's also, I think, a fair school of thought that the Eagles can't just line it up and play the same exact offense that they played last year and expect that teams haven't been preparing for them for over a year now, especially with all the success that they had. They're going to have to be adaptable. They're going to have to show some different things. And plus, they're playing a tougher schedule this year, theoretically, than they did last year. So all that to me says that, you've got a running back who's really good at catching the ball and making yards after the catch along with running. And that's not going to be lost on Jalen Hurts, and it's not going to be lost on Brian Johnson, and it's not going to be lost on Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo. So am I expecting to see more running back catching production this year, especially with a more short-handed running back? Yes. Could I be wrong? Sure. But I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah, I could be, I look at this in a variety of ways. Does the new play caller say, hey, we have a guy who specializes in catching the football. Let's design some plays to get the ball into the running back's hands out of the backfield. Let's run some more screens. Let's run some more wheels. Let's do more with our running back in the pass game. Now, does that mean that he had a season, I think, in Detroit where he caught almost 70 passes? I don't know that he approaches that. And if the offense you see next year is the offense that you called last year, now you have a new play caller. I don't know how that factors in, but that should be something. I asked this question yesterday, Moshe. If Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift are both healthy for all 17 games, which one of those guys is the more productive player?
Oh, man, that's a great question. Probably Swift, because if they're both healthy and who they are, you might see Swift used. Well, it depends on what you're defining production by. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Penny had more yards rushing because he's like the more of a third and fourth quarter guy. You can see really piling up a lot of yards at the end of a game that the Eagles are up by 13 or more. But for the first half of a game, which is when the production really matters most, when you're trying to get that lead, I would think you'd see DeAndre Swift a little bit more involved because then you can run your offense without giving away what you're trying to do, or you can diversify it more by having him out there.
Greg Cosell was on with you guys. He made an interesting comparison of Swift. What did he how did he kind of break down the tape and how he'll fit in to this team?
So he said coming out of Georgia, he looked at Swift as sort of a combination between Alvin Kamara and, now all of a sudden I'm losing it. You queued me up. Do you remember who the other guy was?
Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook, thank you.
This guy sounds like Earl Campbell.
Yeah, I know, right? That's a pretty good combination right there. Yeah. Now, the production hasn't necessarily matched that kind of comparison because he's had some injuries. He's had to split time. He lost a lot of reps to Jamal Williams. And again, he'll probably lose reps in short yardage and goal line here to other guys too. But from a skill set standpoint, as far as how he runs with the ball, how he catches the ball, how he can make some guys miss, I get where Greg is saying that. He does many of the things well that you see in Dalvin Cook and in Alvin Kamara.
All right. We Zaccheaus as the slot guy here. I know obviously he met the media as well, and there's a lot of talk about what his role might be. Do you anticipate that he is a guy who's definitively that third, or do they just bring him in here to try to get more from Watkins, and they want Watkins to be the third?
Well, I don't think it's a message to Quez because they're different types of receivers. I mean, Olamide can play the outside, but I think he's built more like a slot receiver. He's a short-handed guy, probably runs routes across the middle better than you would get from Quez Watkins. But he's certainly there to take some time if Quez either regresses or doesn't improve as much as they want, or if they feel they have enough vertical element out of Smith and A.J. Brown and even the tight end Dallas Goedert, but they want a little bit more of a presence over the middle. Those were areas that we saw either Jalen or even Gardner Minshew sometimes get intercepted or sometimes not complete a pass that should have been completed because it was a route over the middle where Quez was just not in sync with the quarterback.
Yeah. All right, man. We got Sixers tonight. We got Phil's going on now.
I hated that lineup yesterday, by the way. Remember we talked really quickly about where do you bat these guys? I wanted Bryson Stott to still lead off. I wasn't a fan of him.
I talked about this in the first hour. I did not like the Schwarber. I mean, if you were going to hit Schwarber lead off when Harper came back, why wouldn't he just hit lead off the whole game?
Yeah, I do wonder if there's some cause and effect there. He was struggling, so maybe they went back to where they felt he was going to be most productive. But and I will say, Stott crushed one. He almost hit one out last night. But
by the way, Stott has the RBI today. They lead 1-0. Turner doubled, went to third on a ground ball and sack fly for Stott.
There you go. So what are we doing talking to each other? Let's go watch some Phils. Oh, you got work to do. Sorry, bud.
Stuck here till 6, man. Sixers tonight. Phil's going on. They've got Rochambeau the last 2 nights, so we'll see. Yeah. By the way, Harper in the lineup today batting third, and he walked. So there you go.
There we go.
All right, brother. We'll catch up to you.
Always fun, Mike. Take care.
As always, Geoff Mosher. Check out Inside the Birds podcast, the InsideTheBirds.com.